After that, he was too lazy to take care of Jacob, and said to the boss, "You can go out with me to see the goods." "Okay." The boss nodded, and went out of the store with Noah. Mrs. Wilson frowned at this moment and looked at Jacob, and asked coldly, "What are you doing here?" Although Jacob had indeed severed the relationship with the Lady Wilson, on the bright side, she was his own mother anyway, and there was still some respect and jealousy when he met. So, he replied respectfully, "Mom, Charlie's villa decorated, we are thinking about buying some furniture so we can move in." Jacob was telling the truth, but listening to Mrs. Wilson's ears made her feel more uncomfortable than hitting her in the face. When he watched this, she was about to be driven out of the villa, and even started to sell some things left by the old master, but the Jacob family, who was driven out of the house by herself, was going to move to the super-luxurious building of Thompson. When she thought that Thompson was the best villa in Orus Hill, the Lady Wilson felt uncomfortable. She gritted her teeth and said, "You came to show off to me on purpose and watch me joke, right?" "No." Jacob shouted, wronged, and hurriedly explained, "Mom, I didn't mean it. You asked me why I came here, so I told the truth." Seeing Jacob's humble expression in front of the old Mrs. Wilson, Elaine was very upset. This old Mrs. Wilson has bullied her for so many years, and now she's down to the point of selling second-hand furniture. Is she still arrogant here? Who does she show with an old face? Thinking of this, Elaine immediately stepped forward and said mockingly, "Oh, my mother, why did you come here? You still want to sell the furniture that Dad left behind? The Wilson family is now poor. Does it look like?" The old Mrs. Wilson looked at Elaine's mocking, playful face, suddenly became angry, and blurted out, "Elaine, who gave you the courage to talk to me like this?" "Oh." Elaine curled her lips and said, "What is it? You are about to go bankrupt, and you still treat yourself as the head of the family? Aren't you ashamed?" When the old Mrs. Wilson heard Elaine mocked herself, she immediately blurted out, "Elaine, how do you talk to me? Is there still mother-in-law in your eyes?" Elaine said disdainfully, "I know you can't look down on me. What you like is your eldest daughter-in-law Horiah, but your eldest daughter-in-law is really filial to you. I heard that you gave your son a favor." The big green hat swept away all his savings. Speaking of this, Elaine sighed and deliberately reprimanded, "This sister-in-law is really cruel. Even if she left 1 or 2 million for the family, you wouldn't want to sell furniture so miserable now." The old Mrs. Wilson angrily cursed, "Elaine, you shrew, I shouldn't have let you into my Wilson family back then." Elaine said contemptuously, "I'm sorry, we have left the Wilson family now and are no longer in your Wilson family's door. And the broken villa of your Wilson family is too old for too long. We have long been unable to look down on it. Let me tell you, after we buy the furniture today, we move directly to Thompson, a large villa with thousands of square meters, full of luxurious decoration. Living in it is like a queen. But you, Lady Wilson, you have no chance to live in this life." In the past, Elaine was not less angry with Mrs. Wilson, and never had a chance to find her place. Moreover, she has always held grudges, and she had no chance to retaliate against the old Mrs. Wilson. Now that the Lady Wilson is in despair, she naturally has to sneer. Old Mrs. Wilson was trembling with anger at this time, and gritted her teeth and said, "Elaine, don't be too proud. Isn't your villa deceived by Charlie's rubbish? You will be kicked out one day. Then I will wait to see you sleep on the street." Elaine pinched her waist and said, "Wait to see me sleeping on the street? I think you will be sleeping on the street soon, right? I heard that the bank will seal your villa soon. Then I will see what you do. Someday if you starve to death, die of thirst, or freeze to death on the side of the road, you must reflect on it carefully before you die. Why did you end up so tragically? Is it because you have done too much retribution in this life? Enough." The old Mrs. Wilson's chest rose and fell violently, staring at Elaine, and cursed, "You shrew, what if the Wilson family is now down? Sooner or later we have a chance to rise again. For your family, will it be impossible to return to Wilson's house if you wish?" "No." Jacob hurriedly said to Elaine at this time, "How can you talk to Mom like this? Hurry up and apologize to Mom." Elaine frowned and looked at Jacob, and said coldly, You forgot how this old woman drove you out. At this time, she started to turn to him again. You treat her as a mother. Does she treat you as a son? After finishing speaking, Elaine pointed at Mrs. Wilson again, and said coldly, Lady Wilson, I beg you to figure out what is wrong with you now, and you are still pretending with me. I tell you, you are kneeling now. If you ask me to return on the ground, I won't go back. What kind of shit Wilson's family is reduced to selling furniture to survive? Who the hell is going back? The old Mrs. Wilson was mad and pointed to Elaine's nose, saying every word, Elaine, I have lived for so many years. You are the first person who dares to talk to me like this. Remember what you said today. Sooner or later, one day, I will break your leg and make you kneel in front of me and kowtow to apologize. Elaine disdainfully smiled. Come on, just you? A handful of old bones are almost in the soil, and you want to break my leg? Come on, my leg is here. If you have the ability, you can hit me. Give it a try? As she said, Elaine actually stretched out her legs and sneered at the old Mrs. Wilson with contempt.